Hey everyone, and welcome back. Lately I've been hearing from a lot of you that you're trying to get a better grasp on this whole venture capital world,
Yeah.
especially how it all intersects with sports and tech. And well, you're in luck because today we're going to dive deep into the story of Omri Casspi.
Yeah, you got it. That Omri Casspi, the first Israeli NBA player. What's he up to these days?
Well, let me tell you, he's not just sitting courtside anymore. He's gone and launched not one, but two whole venture capital funds.
Yeah, it's really something. This whole trend of seeing these pro athletes, these big names like Cassidy,
Yeah.
stepping into venture capital. I mean, they're coming into this whole new arena
Yeah.
with all this experience, their
Mhm.
networks, and this understanding of high performance that they have. It's not just like endorsements or a little side hustle anymore. This is like a whole new game for them.
Totally, yeah. And just to give everyone a quick recap of his basketball days, Caspi had a pretty solid run in the NBA. Played for some big teams like the Kings. Cavaliers even got a taste of the Warriors for a bit. But then in 2022, he kind of steps off the court and bam, right into venture capital, launching this $36 million fund called Sheva Capital.
And the thing is, he's not just, slapping his name on it and calling it a day. Caspi's actually managing Shiva's portfolio.
Yeah,
All those different companies they've invested in. Oh, and on top of that, he's already launched a second fund called Swish Ventures. So yeah, this isn't just a hobby for him. He's really diving headfirst into this new world.
Swish Ventures is where things get interesting. It's bigger than his first fund, $60 million this time, focused on those early stage startup. But what really stands out to me is that he's narrowed his focus. Swish is all about cybersecurity, cloud infrastructure, and AI. So is this success just because Israel's tech scene is beaming, or is there something about Caspi's approach that's setting him apart?
That's a great question. I mean, there's no doubt that Israel's tech scene it's on fire, especially when it comes to cybersecurity. To put it into perspective, over half of all the venture capital that Israeli startups raised in the first part of this year went to cybersecurity companies. That's wild. But I think it's more than just location for Caspi. Remember, this guy who's a top athlete, used to competing, strategizing, building teams, and all of those skills. Those are super valuable in venture capital, especially when you're putting your money on these early stage companies that are still figuring things out.
Hmm. That's a really good point. Like, he's basically been analyzing talent his whole life, right? Seeing potential where other people might miss it. So are there any companies or like big success stories that really show how strong Israel is in cybersecurity?
Oh, for sure. You've got Wiz, for example. They actually turned down a $23 billion acquisition offer from Google. $23 billion. Can you imagine having that kind of confidence in your company?
Mm.
I mean, that's amazing. And then there's Eon. They hit unicorn status, meaning they reached a $1 billion valuation in just 1 year after being founded.
Wow, $23 billion. I mean, that's insane to turn that down. What do you think was going through their minds at Wiz? Were they really that confident that they could do even better on their own, or?
Well, it's hard to say for sure, but
Yeah.
it definitely makes you think that they see a path to even bigger success without Google. And this actually brings up another interesting trend, the rise of what we call second-time founders.
Mm.
A lot of the people behind these super successful companies like Wiz and Eon, they've been there and done that. They've built companies, sold them to these giants like Microsoft, Amazon, and now they're back for round two.
So it's not just chasing the hot new trend, it's like they're taking all those hard-earned lessons from before and applying it to their new ventures. That experience has got to be priceless.
Oh, absolutely. And here's where Caspi's strategy gets really interesting. He actually invested in Wiz personally and Dion. Eon is part of his Sheva portfolio. So he's clearly seeing the value in that experience and betting on proven talent.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So we've got this former NBA player, now turned venture capitalist, heavily focused on cybersecurity, cloud infrastructure, and AI. But is he the only one doing this? Are there other athletes making these kind of moves?
Oh, not at all. Caspi's part of a much bigger trend here. You've got some huge names like Serena Williams with her Serena Ventures, Kevin Durant's got 35V, Stephen Curry's got Penny Jar Capital, and they're all making waves in the venture capital world. Makes you wonder, what is it about these athletes that makes them such a good fit for this? Is it that competitive drive, their ability to handle risk, or maybe it's about knowing how to build and inspire high-performing teams, just like in sports?
Hmm. Those are some really interesting questions. It's definitely not just about fame or money. There's something deeper going on here for sure.
So let's bring it back to Caspi for a second and take a closer look at the specific companies he's backing. What's catching his eye?
Well, one that really jumps out is Upwind. It's in his Shiva portfolio. And get this, they just hit a $900 million valuation. That's more than some entire NBA teams are worth. It really makes you think about how someone goes from slam dunks to startup valuations, huh?
Right. And here's another interesting tidbit. Stephen Curry is also an investor in Upwind. So clearly there's something special going on there that's attracting some serious attention. Another one to keep an eye on is Point Five. It was founded by these entrepreneurs who sold their previous company to Rapid7, and they've already raised $36 million. That kind of track record and early success definitely gets investors excited.
It's not just about the individual companies, though, right? Combined, Caspi's firms have about $125 million in assets under management. Not bad for a former basketball player. But there's another interesting development with Swish Ventures. They've brought on Dana Alexandrovich as an operating partner. Now, I know what you're thinking. Who is Dana Alexandrovich, and why should we care?
Oh, you should definitely care. This is a big deal. She's got a super impressive background. She was the COO of Microsoft in Israel, led sales operations across the Middle East and Africa. We're talking serious leadership experience and deep knowledge of the tech world here.
So what's the bigger picture here? What does the strategic hire tell us about Switch Ventures and what they're trying to do?
Well, a couple of things jump out at me. First, it shows that they're serious about operational excellence within their portfolio companies. Alexandrovich's experience, especially at a powerhouse like Microsoft, is going to be invaluable to the startups they invest in. Second, her expertise in the Middle East and Africa suggests that they might be looking beyond Israel and the U.S., tapping into new markets with huge growth potential.
It's like Caspi's bringing that A-game mentality from the MBA to venture capital. He's not just surrounding himself with talented people, he's building a team of all-stars.
Yeah.
Bringing in someone with Alexandrovich's experience. It's not just about adding a name to the roster. It's about a specific vision and a skill set that really stage startups really need.
Exactly. And it all comes back to Caspi's commitment to doing more than just throwing money at a problem. He's building a whole ecosystem of support for these companies to really thrive. Think about it. What other industry demands that kind of constant learning, adapting and pushing your limits?
Professional sports, for sure. And,
Yeah,
the whole venture capital world, it can seem kind of intimidating, right? Maybe even a bit exclusive. But this story, it kind of throws those doors wide open.
totally. We often think of venture capital as this very specific profile, the Ivy League MBA, the finance guru. But Caspi's story and the stories of all these other athletes becoming investors, they show that success can come from all kinds of backgrounds, from unexpected places.
It's like experience, passion, that willingness to learn. Those can be just as valuable as any fancy degree.
Absolutely. So for those of you listening who are intrigued by venture capital, consider this an invitation to explore those less traditional paths. Don't be afraid to look for those hidden gems, the people who are bringing fresh perspectives and new ideas to the table.
And it's not just about finding those gems. It's about recognizing the gems you already have within yourself. Caspi's story reminds us that sometimes. The most unexpected paths lead to the most exciting destinations. Yeah, it really makes you think. Like, what could you bring to the table? What unique skills and experience do you have that could work in venture capital? It's worth thinking about.
Definitely. And this whole conversation, it's got me thinking about something else. We've talked about these athletes and their competitive drive and all. But what about their understanding of branding and marketing? I mean, they've spent their whole careers building a personal brand, connecting with fans, and really understanding what resonates with people. Those are some pretty valuable skills in the startup world too, don't you think?
Oh, totally. Building a company is a lot like building a brand. You need a strong story, a clear identity, and a way to connect with your audience. It's not just about the product or service, it's about the whole package.
Exactly. And these athletes, they've been doing this for years. They know how to tell a story, how to build a following.
Yeah.
And they're not afraid to take risks and try new things.
So maybe it's not just about what skills translate from sports to venture capital. Maybe it's more about the mindset, that willingness to learn to adapt and to constantly push yourself.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And that's something we can all learn from no matter what our background is or what we do for a living. This whole deep dive into Omri Caspi's world, it's not just about venture capital. It's about challenging our assumptions and
Yeah.
opening our minds to new possibilities.
Yeah, it's about recognizing that success can come from anywhere, and that sometimes those unexpected paths are the ones that lead to the most interesting places. Who knows, maybe there's a former teacher out there launching the next big edtech company, or a retired engineer who's building a sustainable energy solution that will change the world.
Exactly. The possibilities are endless. And that's what makes this whole thing so exciting. It's not about following someone else's playbook. It's about writing your own.
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive. From the basketball court to the venture capital court, Omri Caspi's journey is really inspiring. It shows the power of diverse experiences and how life can take you on some pretty unexpected paths.
It reminds us that we all have unique talents and things to offer. And who knows what we can achieve if we're brave enough to step outside our comfort zones and embrace the unknown. So keep learning, keep exploring, and keep pushing those boundaries. The world needs what you have to offer.
Yeah, and it's not just athletes, right? We've seen musicians, chefs, all making their mark in venture capital. What is it about these folks that helps them succeed?
Well, they're all super creative, right? And they're used to taking risks, putting themselves out there.
And they have to be adaptable too, right? Things change quickly in those worlds.
Oh, for sure. They have to think on their feet and be ready to pivot, just like in venture capital.
So maybe it's not just about specific skills, but also a certain mindset.
Totally. Like a willingness to embrace uncertainty and be comfortable with failure.
That's a great point.
I mean, failure is just part of the process, right?
Absolutely. You learn from your mistakes and you move on.
And in both those worlds, you got to be passionate. Like, you really got to believe in what you're doing.
Yeah, you can't just be in it for the money. It's got to be something deeper than that.
Exactly. And, that's something I think we can all apply to our own lives, whether we're interested in venture capital or not.
Totally. Like,
Yeah.
what are you passionate about? What risks are you willing to take? What failures have you learned from?
Those are the questions that can really lead us to some amazing places.
This has been an incredible deep dive. Omri Caspi's story is a perfect example of how we can all break out of our comfort zones and pursue our passions.
Absolutely. And, it's not just about him. It's about all of us. We all have the potential to do something amazing.
So keep learning, keep exploring, and keep pushing those boundaries. You never know where you might end up.
And that's what makes life so exciting.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
We'll see you next time.